Okay, so have you ever actually stopped to wonder what exactly happened right before Odysseus got himself famously lost at sea for 10 whole years? Like, what level of absolute unhinged chaos led up to this legendary journey? Well, to understand the epic journey home, we first have to understand the literal nightmare he was leaving behind. And according to the ancient lore, this whole saga started because Zeus looked down at the earth and basically thought, you know what, there are just way too many humans down there. So he decides to manufacture this massive, apocalyptic conflict just to thin the herd. Wild, right?
So welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking the Prelude to the Odyssey. We're going to break down all the myths, the politics, and honestly, the completely unhinged drama of the Trojan War. So buckle up, because the lore we're getting into today is absolutely relentless.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're talking about 10 years of straight chaos, a full decade of non-stop warfare on a beach in ancient Turkey, just bodies everywhere. Now, you might be thinking, wow, this war must have started over something incredibly profound, right? Like some massive clash of ideologies or an unavoidable geopolitical crisis. But the actual spark that ignited this 10-year bloodbath? An apple. Seriously, I'm not kidding. The literal spark of the Trojan War was a single piece of fruit known as the apple of discord.
So here is how the drama actually kicks off. The gods are throwing this massive, super exclusive wedding for Achilles' parents, and they purposely do not invite Eris, the goddess of discord, because, shocker, she causes problems. But Eris is incredibly petty. She rolls up to the wedding and just tosses a solid golden apple straight into the middle of the party. And engraved on this apple are 3 words: to the fairest. Instantly, 3 heavy-hitting goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, start beefing over who gets to claim it. They run straight to Zeus to settle the argument, but look, Zeus knows better than to get involved. He's married to Hera. Athena is his daughter. Yeah, he is not touching this dispute with a 10-foot pole.
Instead, Zeus just offloads the problem. He picks a totally random mortal to play judge, Paris, the Prince of Troy. Now, what's really interesting here is how the goddesses immediately resort to outright bribery to win his vote. Hera offers him immense land and power. Athena offers him unmatched wisdom and battle skills. But Aphrodite, she offers him the most beautiful woman on earth. And Paris, being a man of very specific tastes, goes right ahead and chooses Aphrodite's bribe. The only little problem? The most beautiful woman on earth is Helen of Sparta, and she is already very much married to King Menelaus. But Paris doesn't care. He heads over to Sparta, meets Helen, they run away together, and Paris steals her back to Troy. Oh, and he takes a bunch of Menelaus' jewels and treasure along for the ride, just for good measure.
So the crucial point here is that while King Menelaus is obviously furious about his stolen wife, his big brother, King Agamemnon, sees this as an absolute goldmine of an opportunity. Agamemnon is basically the king of all Greek kings, and he has wanted to attack Troy for years to seize their incredibly lucrative trade routes and all their vast wealth. The catch was always that Troy's walls are famous for being utterly impenetrable, and, it's pretty hard to convince thousands of men to go die on a beach just to improve your personal economy. But a stolen Spartan queen? A broken ancient oath where all Greek kings swore to protect Helen's marriage? Now, that is the perfect, noble excuse Agamemnon needed to finally rally the troops and launch his massive invasion.
But before they can even set sail, we get this really stark reminder that the Greek gods are not benevolent figures. They are petty, they're jealous, and they are downright cruel. While preparing the massive fleet, Agamemnon accidentally kills a sacred stag that belongs to the goddess Artemis, and she is furious. She completely traps the entire Greek fleet by stopping the winds, and she delivers this horrifying ultimatum. The only way the ships can sail is if Agamemnon sacrifices his own daughter, Iphigenia. And the wildest part of this whole thing? Agamemnon actually does it. He literally sacrifices his own child just to get his war machines moving. Let that sink in.
Okay, so this brings us to a key player you might actually recognize, Odysseus. Now, Odysseus did not want to go to this war. He had just had a newborn son, and he was completely ready to just settle down and be a dad. But despite his reputation for incredible cunning and a pretty heavy dose of hubris, that extreme, sometimes dangerous overconfidence, he was still terrified of what Agamemnon would do to him if he refused the call to arms. So he begrudgingly joins the effort, knowing his sharp mind is definitely going to be tested.
Agamemnon quickly gives Odysseus his first major assignment: find Achilles. See, there's this prophecy that the Greeks simply cannot win the war without Achilles. He's the greatest warrior alive, practically invulnerable because his goddess mother dipped him in the river Styx as a baby. But knowing he was fated to die at Troy, his mother actually hid Achilles by disguising him as a girl in an all-girls school. You can't make this stuff up. Odysseus gets wind of this and comes up with a brilliant little trap. He disguises himself as a merchant, goes to the school courtyard and lays out 2 piles of gifts, beautiful jewelry in one and deadly weapons in the other. Then he has a sudden alarm sounded. All the girls scream and run for cover, but one exceptionally buff girl immediately grabs a sword, ready to fight. Busted. Achilles is officially recruited.
So Achilles arrives with his elite squad, the Myrmidons, and his closest companion, Patroclus. But even with the absolute greatest warrior on Earth, things did not go as planned. For 9 of the 10 years of this massive war, the Greeks are just stuck. They're literally camped on the beach outside those impenetrable Trojan walls. They aren't winning, they are quite literally just taking L after L. It becomes this grueling, completely miserable stalemate in what is fundamentally just a proxy war for the amusement of the gods up above.
Now, if you actually pick up the famous epic poem about this war, the Iliad, it doesn't even start at the wedding or with the golden apple. No, it drops you right into the 9th year of this agonizing beach camp. It uses a storytelling technique called in media res, which just means dropping directly into the middle of the action. And let me tell you, by year 9, the interpersonal drama among the Greeks is absolutely off the charts.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how messy things got. The Greeks raid some nearby allied towns, and Agamemnon claims a maiden named Chryseis, while Achilles gets Briseis. But Chryseis' father happens to be a priest of Apollo. When Agamemnon flat out refuses to give her back, Apollo sends a devastating plague raining down on the Greek camp, until Agamemnon is finally forced to return her. But Agamemnon is so prideful that he decides, as compensation, he is going to steal Achilles' maiden Briseis. This sparks a completely catastrophic chain reaction. Achilles is so deeply insulted that he entirely quits the war. He even goes crying to his goddess mother, asking her to convince Zeus to let the Trojans win, just to make Agamemnon choke on his own arrogance.
And Zeus actually agrees to this wildly petty request. The Trojans, led by the heroic Prince Hector, surge forward and start absolutely decimating the Greek forces. They push them all the way back to the ocean, right up to their very ships. The entire Greek army is on the verge of being burned alive right there on the beach. And what is Achilles doing during all of this? He is literally sitting in his tent, watching it happen, effectively saying, "I don't care." He just flat out refuses to lift a finger to fight.
Let's move along and see how this builds, because this inaction ultimately leads to the tragic climax of the whole war. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, and honestly, ancient texts are very messy on the exact nature of their relationship, but we know they were incredibly close. Anyway, Patroclus cannot bear to watch the Greeks die. He begs Achilles to fight, but Achilles still refuses. So Patroclus borrows Achilles' legendary armor to go out and scare the Trojans. It actually works at first, but Patroclus pushes way too far and is killed by the Trojan prince Hector. Achilles is utterly devastated. He completely loses his mind, goes out onto the battlefield, and slaughters Hector in a fit of absolute rage, disrespectfully dragging Hector's body behind his chariot for days. The cruelty only breaks when the Trojan king Priam sneaks into the Greek camp in the dead of night to tearfully beg for his son's mutilated body. And shortly after this emotionally crushing moment, Achilles meets his own prophesied end, struck down by an arrow to his one vulnerable spot, his heel. A quick medical fun fact for you, that is exactly why the tendon in the back of your ankle is literally called the Achilles tendon today.
So, with Achilles dead, the Greeks are exhausted, they're demoralized, and they are completely out of ideas. 10 years of throwing brute force against Troy's walls has completely failed. That is exactly when Odysseus steps up. He realizes they can't win with strength, they're going to have to win with trickery. He devises the infamous Trojan horse. The Greeks build this massive wooden horse, hide their absolute best soldiers inside its hollow belly, and then sailed their ships away to make it look like they've finally surrendered and gone home. They leave the horse behind as a gift to the gods. The Trojans, who are completely exhausted and just so eager for the war to be over, drag this magnificent horse right through their impenetrable gates and into the heart of their city. And, well, you know what happens next. The soldiers slip out at night, open the gates for the returning Greek army, and Troy finally falls.
And just like that, an entire empire burns to the ground. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. But before you go, consider this really striking takeaway. This 10 years of absolute gods-meddling bloodbath, that was just the prelude. If surviving a 10-year meat grinder orchestrated by vengeful deities was merely the warm-up, what unimaginable horrors and trials do you think await Odysseus on his way back to his son?